Welcome to today's explainer on Indigenous governance, trade, and knowledge systems.
We have a very specific learning target for today. Our goal is, I can compare evidence about Indigenous governance, exchange, and knowledge systems without treating diverse nations as one system. Right off the bat, we need to clear up a massive misconception. Indigenous societies were never just one uniform system. Instead, we're talking about distinct, incredibly diverse nations, each with their own unique and complex ways of doing things. You might hear the number 575 from the Bureau of Indian Affairs. Now, it's super important to remember that this is just a current federal recognition statistic. It's an administrative number, definitely not a comprehensive count of all the distinct Indigenous cultures and nations out there. So, how do we actually study these diverse systems? Well, we use primary sources. These are the direct, first-hand materials from the past. Think of an original treaty, an old photograph, or a piece of artwork from that exact time period. We also use secondary sources. These are created after the fact. They offer an analysis or an interpretation of historical events by someone who studied the primary evidence, kind of like the chapters in your history textbook. Let's do a quick pause check A to see if you've got this. Between a diary entry written in 1850 and a 2024 textbook chapter, which one is primary and which one is secondary? Okay, the immediate answer reasoning here is that the 1850 diary is your primary source because it's a first-hand, lived account. The 2024 textbook is the secondary source because it analyzes the past long after it actually happened. To actually evaluate any of these documents, historians use a skill called sourcing. Sourcing basically means playing detective to figure out exactly who made the document, when it was made, and the specific purpose or reason why they created it in the first place. Next up is contextualization. This is where you zoom out to look at the wider historical situation and time period. You really need to understand the bigger picture and what was happening in society at that moment to make sense of the source. Finally, we use corroboration. This is basically cross-checking. You're comparing multiple sources against each other to see if their stories match up, if their evidence agrees, and if they actually support the same historical claim. And a quick pro tip on where to look. While federal agency landing pages from the NPS, BIA, NARA, or the Library of Congress might point you toward cool archives, those front pages themselves do not provide nation-specific historical evidence. Let's move to our next section, modeling source comparison, historical maps versus modern analysis. Both of these source types are incredibly valuable, but they serve completely different purposes when we're trying to uncover history. Let's break it down. An 1800s map is great because it can establish settler perspectives, show the historical boundaries they drew, and give us a look at early geography from their point of view. However, that exact same 1800s map absolutely cannot establish the deep, internal Indigenous knowledge systems or how local community governance worked. The mapmaker just didn't have that insider access or understanding. On the flip side, modern analysis can establish a fantastic, broad historical context. It can synthesize decades of research by pulling together hundreds of different primary sources into one clear picture. But modern analysis cannot establish the first-hand lived experience of that historical moment. It's an interpretation looking backward from a distance, so you lose that raw, on-the-ground feeling. All right, let's put this into action with a practice routine, evaluating hypothetical documents. Imagine we have two sources. Document A is a hypothetical journal written by a local nation member. Document B is a hypothetical account written by a distant traveler who was just passing through the area. Time for pause check B. Which of these two documents provides stronger corroboration for a claim about that specific nation's internal governance? The immediate answer, reasoning, is that same nation or local evidence, like Document A, is stronger for a specific claim because it offers a true insider's perspective, though you must still evaluate its context and limitations too. Let's lock in what we've covered with an explainer recap. Indigenous societies were diverse nations, definitely not one uniform system. Historians use sourcing, contextualization, and corroboration to evaluate both primary and secondary sources. Comparing sources, like an 1800s map versus a modern analysis, reveals exactly what different evidence can and cannot establish. How would you compare two sources before making a claim about an Indigenous nation's history?